And believe me, when Kamala does, nobody's going to want to stand in her way. I've witnessed it. I remember after the home mortgage crisis, Kamala pushed me and my administration harder than any other attorney general in the country to make sure homeowners got a fair settlement. And it didn't matter that I was a Democrat. She wasn't going to let anything stop her from winning as much relief as possible for the families who deserved it. That's who she is. That's the kind of president Kamala Harris will be. To lower housing costs, Kamala is going to cut red tape and work with state and local governments, as well as the private sector, to build 3 million new homes. Concrete plans. She'll give first-time homebuyers up to $25,000 to help them with a down payment. Concrete plans. To lower health care costs. Kamala already worked with Joe Biden to take on the drug companies, bring down the cost of insulin, hearing aids, more than 50 prescription drugs. Rubin worked on that. He knows about it. And as president, Kamala will never stop working to limit out-of-pocket costs and protect your care. Concrete plans. That's who Kamala is. And instead of giving more tax cuts to billionaires and people who don't need them and raising prices on working families, Kamala's going to give a tax cut to 100 million middle-class and working people here in America. So, if you're a new parent, you could qualify for a $6,000 tax credit during the first year of your child's life. That will help, because raising kids is hard. She wants to make it easier to afford stuff like a crib or a car seat or diapers. You think Donald Trump's ever changed the diaper? No. Jeeves, what is this? If you're starting a small business, Kamala Harris will give you a $50,000 tax credit to help you get it off the ground. She believes in entrepreneurship. That's who Kamala is. That's what she stands for, not concepts of a plan, actual plans. Now, if you challenge Trump or J.D. Vance on these quote-unquote concepts, they'll fall back on one final answer. This is their go-to. After everything else makes no sense, they'll go, and it doesn't matter what the issue is, housing, health care, education, paying the bills, he'll blame immigrants. He wants you to believe that if you let him round up whoever he wants and ship them out, all your problems will be solved. Now, wait, hold on a second, because this is a serious piece of business. Arizona's a border state. You know there are real issues at the border. We can't pretend there are not. We are a nation of laws, and we are a nation of immigrants. We were built on immigrants looking for a better life. We also have to make sure that the system works the way it was supposed to, right? So we have a real problem to solve. But remember, Donald Trump was president for 4 years. He likes to talk about Kamala being vice president for 4 years. We remember you being president, buddy, for 4 years. And if rounding up and deporting millions of desperate people, many of them women and children, is the answer to everything, looks like we might need an EMT right in front here. Everybody bend your knees real quick, because sometimes when you stand too long, you get a little faint. She'll be all right. Just got to make sure, and drink something if you got it, all right? Good job, EMTs. So the question is, why didn't he actually solve the problem when he was in power? Why was the number of undocumented immigrants basically the same when he left office as when he took office? I'll tell you why. Because he didn't have a real plan, and he still doesn't. What he had is talking points. What he had is a concept of a plan. And by the way, it was a mean and ugly concept. You know what would actually help bring order to the border and actually help fix our immigration system? The bipartisan deal that Kamala Harris supported, even though it was written by one of the most conservative Republicans in Congress, and Donald Trump deliberately lobbied against it and told Republicans don't vote for it because he figured that if you passed it, he would not be able to engage in the same kind of fear-mongering that he's been doing. He cared more about winning an election than he did to actually solve the problem. Vote. We do not need a president who's willing to make problems worse to make his politics better. We need a president who actually cares about solving problems, making your life better. That's what Kamala Harris will do. And that's why you got to vote. And to help her do it, she needs a Senate full of public servants like Ruben Gallego. Ruben. Keep going while I take my sip of water. Ruben. You heard Ruben speak a little bit about his life. Son of an immigrant, single mom. Growing up, he and his sisters didn't have much. He worked construction, worked as a meat packer, anything to help his family. Later, he served in the Marines. In Congress, he's proven that he will stand up to corporate price gouging and work to lower costs for families. Ruben's the kind of person we need in Washington. This is the kind of person who's going to help Kamala get stuff done. Folks who share our values and will do whatever they can to move the country forward. And him teaming up with Mark Kelly, man, that's a powerful 1-2 punch right there. One of those values that Ruben shares and that's talked a lot about in the campaign is freedom. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I do not think we've ever had an election with candidates who understand freedom so differently. For Donald Trump and his cronies, freedom means that the powerful can do whatever they please. That's his definition of freedom. I want to fire workers for trying to organize a union. I should be free to do so. You know, they want the freedom to throw out votes if they lose an election. They want to control what women can and can't do to their bodies. In other words, for Trump, freedom is getting away with stuff. And it's like he said in the middle of the pandemic, when he said, I do not take any responsibility at all. I'm not sure any American president has ever uttered those words other than Donald Trump. I do not take any. People were dying. Hospitals overrun. I do not take any responsibility at all. That's his idea of freedom. I do what I want, and I'm not responsible for anything. We have a broader idea of freedom. We believe in the freedom to provide for our families if we're willing to work. The freedom to breathe clean air and drink clean water. The freedom to send our kids to school without worrying if they'll come home safely. We believe that true freedom gives each of us the right to make decisions about our own lives, how we worship, who we marry, what our family looks like. And we also believe that freedom requires us to recognize that other people have the freedom to make different choices. And it doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't make them evil people. It doesn't make them enemies of the state. I mean, I listen to some of the language that's being thrown around. Look, even on the most contentious issues, I've always said there are good people of conscience on both sides of the abortion divide. And I respect anybody whose faith tells them that it's not something that they would do, that they support. But if we believe in freedom, then we should at least agree that such a deeply personal decision should be made by the woman whose body is involved, not by politicians. And it's been fascinating to watch Donald Trump just try to tie himself into a pretzel on this issue because he sees that what his party has been doing is unpopular, and so when he ran for president the first time, he said he would support punishing women who got an abortion. Punishing women. Then a couple weeks ago, he tells women he'll be their, quote, protector. I will tell you how he protected you, quote unquote. He handpicked 3 of the Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe versus Wade. He bragged about it, and now there are Trump abortion bans in 20 states, many of them with no exceptions for rape and incest. And he's out there saying, well, you know, everyone wanted it this way. Really? Donald Trump may be confused, but let's be clear about what's at stake here. If you send Ruben Gallego to the Senate, he'll vote to restore the reproductive freedom that women had for nearly 50 years. And if Congress passes that bill, Kamala Harris will sign it into law. Because they understand freedom is about being able to make the right choice for ourselves and our families. And here in Arizona, you don't even have to wait. Abortion's actually on the ballot right here. You have a chance to vote yes on Prop 139 and put women, not politicians, back in control of their personal medical decisions. It's an example of how, at the end of the day, this election, it's not just about policies. It's not just about plans or concepts of a plan. It's about values. It's about who we are, how we treat each other, the example we want to set for our children and their children. It's about character. Some of you know that when I was growing up, I didn't have a father in the house. But I was lucky enough to have people around me. A stepfather for a time, my grandparents, teachers, coaches, and most of all, my mom, who taught me the difference between right and wrong, who showed me what it meant to have integrity and to be honest and to be responsible and to work hard and to treat other people the way I wanted them to treat me. And I suspect most of you grew up the same way. And as you know, I wasn't perfect right off the bat. And sometimes I didn't live up to those values and I made mistakes. And I tried to learn from them. And then as I got older, I continued to benefit from people who reinforced those values. And obviously my wife, Michelle, was one of those people. She's still trying to make me a little bit better. But it wasn't just Michelle. It was also friends and coworkers and neighbors, and even political opponents, people on the other side of the aisle. And I already mentioned it before. Being here in Tucson, I'm thinking about my friend John McCain. Yeah. Now, I don't want to over-romanticize our relationship, and John was conservative, to put it mildly. Ran against me in 2008. Talked about me on the campaign trail. But you know what? He understood that some values transcend party. He believed in honest argument and hearing the views of other people. He didn't demonize his political opponents. You remember the time at the end of the campaign when a woman at one of his rallies said, "Oh, Obama, you can't vote for that Arab. He's not even a citizen." And she started going on a rant, and he said, "Ma'am, hold on a second. I have a lot of disagreements with Senator Obama, but I serve with him. He's a good man. He's an honorable man. He's a patriotic American." Shut it down. He knew that if we get in the habit of bending the truth to suit political expediency or party orthodoxy, our democracy can't work. The man had character. People like Gabby Giffords and Mark Kelly have character. Your governor has character. Your mayor has character. That's what I think about these days. I think about this a lot because it's so different from what we see right now out of the Republican nominee. And increasingly, the entire party has just decided it's okay. I mean, one of the most disturbing things about this election and Donald Trump's rise in politics is how we seem to have set aside the values that people like a John McCain stood for. Values we were taught. A few weeks ago, we had one of the deadliest hurricanes in American history. And President Biden and Vice President Harris were down in North Carolina meeting with local officials and comforting families. And meanwhile, Donald Trump and his running mate were making up stories, circulating stories about how the Biden administration was withholding aid and not giving it to Republican areas and giving it to undocumented immigrants, just making stuff up. And even Republicans on the ground said it was a bald-faced lie. And there were real consequences to this. The other day, a man was arrested for threatening FEMA workers, emergency relief workers, because he believed some of those lies that were being spread. This isn't harmless. Yet people some workers have been forced to relocate because they're worried about their safety. People who were just trying to help. And you're trying to exploit that? Folks at their most vulnerable? It is shameful. And because Donald Trump feels like making stuff up, you've got hard-working public servants who cannot do their jobs. And you've got desperate families being left to fend for themselves. Some of them are not even applying for aid they're eligible for because they've believed that, well, there's no point because I'm not going to get help. So my question is, when did that become okay? Look, no, that if your coworkers acted like that, they wouldn't be your coworkers for very long. If you had a family member who acted like that, just making stuff up, hurtful stuff, you might still love them, but you tell them you got a problem. And you certainly wouldn't put them in charge of anything. And yet when Donald Trump lies or cheats or bullies or shows utter disregard for our Constitution, when he calls service members like John McCain losers because they died in battle or were captured, when he calls fellow citizens vermin or the enemy within, people make excuses for it. They think it's okay, so long as their side wins. And I have to say, I've noticed this especially with some men who think Trump's behavior, the bullying and the putting people down and acting all, pretend tough guy, that somehow that's a sign of strength. I am here to tell you that is not what real strength is. Never has been. Real strength is about working hard and carrying a heavy load without complaining. Real strength is about taking responsibility for your actions and telling the truth even when it's inconvenient. Real strength is about helping people who need it and standing up for those who can't always stand up for themselves. That's what we should want for our daughters and our sons. That's what I want to see in the President of the United States of America. And the good news is that you have a candidate. You have candidates to vote for in this election who demonstrate character, who know what real strength looks like, who will set a good example and will do the right thing and lead this country better than they found it. And that is the choice in this election. So, if you are talking to friends and family and neighbors, and it's hard to have political conversations right now. Sometimes families are getting divided. It's getting so intense. Friendships are broken off because of it. It shouldn't be that way. But Ruben and I were talking to a remarkable group of men right before we came out, and we were talking about this, and somebody said, man, I'm just so tired of everybody being divided and mean and nasty. And I said, well, we don't have to be that way. We can make arguments while still saying, I love you and I'm going to listen to you. But you need to have those conversations, though. If somebody says, well, I'm thinking about voting for Trump because I remember the economy being pretty good, remind them why it was good. If you say, well, I'm mad about higher prices, you say, well, hey, what is exactly Donald Trump's plan for higher prices? Just ask him. And if they don't, you tell them he's got concepts of a plan, and it don't make sense. If they're concerned about issues like immigration, ask them, well, what do you think he's going to do? Because we know what he did the first time didn't work. You can have that conversation. And if after you've gone through that, and the folks who are unconvinced say, yeah, I don't know, I still like him, then I think you have to then say, yeah, but what about character? What about values? Because that matters. It's not just policies are on the ballot. Don't vote for somebody who does not respect you. Don't vote for somebody who makes fun of people because they're not like them. Don't prey on people who are weaker than you. It's about values. It's about character. So whether this election is making you feel excited or scared or hopeful or frustrated or any vote for Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States. Vote for Tim Walz as the next vice president of the United States. Vote for Ruben Gallego and this whole incredible Arizona Democratic ticket. Tell your friends and family members and neighbors to do the same. Because if enough of us make our voices heard, we will leave no doubt about the outcome of this election. We will leave no doubt about who we are and what America stands for. And together we will keep building a country that is more fair and more just and more equal and more free. That is our job. That's our responsibility. Tucson, let's go do it. Thank you. I love you. Bye-bye.